Hello students, and welcome to our world history class. We return to our World War II unit, and we are going to discuss the rise of two dictators in Europe during World War II in the presentation Prelude to War. Now, after World War I, Germany lost a great deal of territory, among other problems. Germany had to accept total blame for the war, as well as pay for reparations for the damages of that war. This led to inflation, as the government printed more money to pay the debt off. This made currency basically useless, because it was so easy to find, obviously. Now, as we can see, by 1923, 1 trillion marks would buy the equivalent of 1 gold mark. This is because gold was simply so much more valuable. This was because gold was simply so much more valuable than the paper money it was at this point in history. As you can see by the graph, back in 1918, they were roughly equal in value. So, based on these problems, Germany had a sense of hopelessness, and they needed a leader to make themselves proud to be German. This leader would come from an unlikely source. As we see here, circled in the red, a young Austrian soldier managed to serve in the German army during the war. And after the war, he wanted to either become an artist or enter politics. Well, here's an example of his artwork, but after an art school turned him down, he decided to enter politics instead. Well, he started speaking on various street corners in Germany, and people started listening to him. And as more and more people listened to him, he began speaking in more and more venues. And eventually, he became popular enough to become elected Chancellor of Germany in 1933, and his name was Adolf Hitler. Now, Hitler was a fierce and charismatic speaker. Although Germans assumed blame for World War I, as the treaty was forced them to, Hitler instead claimed that there was a problem in Germany for which he had a final solution. Hitler blamed Germany's defeat in World War I on Jews that were in Germany. He claimed that they accepted a surrender after being bribed by the Allies in World War I. He claimed that the German army would have defeated the Allies but the German government, the non-military leaders, chose instead to surrender. And Hitler believed that Jews were responsible for this surrender, and if they had simply chosen to continue fighting, they would have eventually forced a stalemate that would have given some more favorable terms to Germany. Here's another example of, quite literally, the Jewish subversives, as Hitler would call them, stabbing the German soldier in the back. Now, Hitler became leader in 1933, but he needed a way to ensure that he remained in power under over his subjects. And the way he did that was by developing a political ideology called fascism. Fascism is a form of politics that basically asks that people conform to a sort of national identity. In Hitler's case, he wanted everyone to conform to a strong German Aryan race system. We'll talk more about Aryans and the Nazis' racial laws in a later lesson. As we can see, nationalistic ties of fascism hold people together by ancestry, culture, and blood. As we mentioned, this was the Aryan race. But one of the key components of fascism that just because anyone can really be nationalistic and be held together by ties of ancestry, culture, and blood. I mean, the Britons are an ethnicity all to their own. The French are an ethnicity all to their own. Everyone, every European or every country really has a sense of nationalism. But fascism takes that one step further by usually forming a totalitarian dictatorship with strong military ties. Basically, Hitler was in charge of the army, and the army really became the main source of power in Germany at this time. Now, we've been talking about Germany for quite a lot, but in actuality, fascism didn't really get started in Germany, or was it started by Hitler for that matter. It was actually developed in World War I in Italy by another man who we'll be talking about in just a second. As we can see on this graph, fascism is down on the lower right side. It is conservative, but also authoritarian, meaning that a high government source, in this case Hitler, told the people what to do, and they were expected to do it. If we can see on the opposite side, on the left and libertarian area, as well as the left and authoritarian area, on the far extremes from fascism were communism and anarchism. These were two other groups that Hitler also blamed for the troubles of Germany after World War I, and he targeted them as well as Jews and some other groups that we'll also talk about in a later lesson. But back to Italy, where fascism began in the late 1910s and early 1920s. And oddly enough, Hitler became very good friends with the man who developed fascism. His name was Benito Mussolini, and here's an image of them together in a car ride in Germany. Hitler greatly admired Mussolini and borrowed his political ideology. Mussolini had a similar background as Hitler. He served in World War I as an Italian soldier, but he did not believe that Italy received its rewards after World War I. Let me remind you that Italy did fight on our side after World War I. It fought with the Allies, with the Triple Entente, the United States, Great Britain, and France. But it suffered many casualties. Over 1 million men were killed in Italy. And the Italians did not believe that they got their just rewards after fighting and dying in such horrifying numbers. In fact, this was all Italy received after World War I from the defeated powers of Austria and Hungary and Germany. As we can see, just a small portion of territory called the Trieste area, which is on the Adriatic Ocean, was added to the Italian territory after World War I. Mussolini believed that the Italians were entitled to more of this, and he began writing a couple of books while he was protesting against the government, demanding that the Italians should receive more for their efforts in World War I. Now, that's all for now. We're going to talk a bit more about this later on in the lesson, but we have a slight project that we're going to work on just now. So we hope you'll enjoy it, and thank you very much.